stats don't tell the full story. You've heard it, I've heard it. But let me ask you this. If stats don't matter, how come all the top players have nearly identical stats? And why can you look at this picture and immediately know what went wrong? I've run a little experiment with stats and how they correlate to somebody's issues in a game. How did I help hundreds of players rank up within 24 hours? Not through aim training, not with VOD reviews, by teaching them one thing. Stats do matter if you know how to read them. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what your stats mean and how to use them to start ranking up from literally your next game. But first, in order for you to truly understand stats, let's clear up the most common misconceptions. Let's start with this one. If stats mattered, Moira would be the best support. Sounds reasonable until you look deeper. When you compare stats, you have to compare them between the same hero. Moira will usually top both damage and healing. But she takes longer to confirm kills because her damage is easy to heal through. So yes, Moira does more damage, but Ana can secure more kills within that short time frame. With Ana, you can secure an elimination very fast, and with Moira, it will take you significantly longer, which naturally will result in doing more damage because it will take you more time to secure the same elimination. So to clarify, when you play Ana, you'd like to compare it to other Ana players and not Moira players. I have good stats, but I still lost. Stats in each individual game could fluctuate. What matters is what they are on average across all the games that you've played in a season. How many times do you think you're going to lose out of 10 games? 10 games, how many losses would you have if you every game 60 kills 4 deaths? Maybe 1 or 2, exactly. The idea of having high stats or like performing well or like having the most optimal playstyle, as they say, you know? It's not about winning 100% of the time, it's winning the vast majority, because winning 100% of the time is impossible within the variables of Overwatch, because essentially you play 5 on 5, right? You play 5 on 5, and 5 people are completely random, 5 people play completely different characters, but yeah. Even if you feel like you should have not lost the game because of an exceptional performance, remember that better stats just increase your likelihood but don't give you a guarantee on the win. Overwatch is still a team game to a small degree. Aiming to win 100% of the matches is not realistic, but winning most of them is. The enemy team has way worse stats than my team, but they still won. Just because the enemy team has less kills, less damage, and more deaths doesn't necessarily mean they will lose the game. It just means that they beat you on another stat that you normally don't pay attention to. Like objective time, for example. The enemy team could have done most of their kills and damage around the objective, so they used their ultimates to capture the objective, which means they had more objective time. Compared to your team that could have got the kills and the damage and ultimates not around the objective, thus losing the fight. But that's a very specific argument. I promise you, most of the time when you win, your stats are way better than the enemy teams. Let me tell you a quick story of how I used stats to beat the #1 Zenyatta player at the time. It was about 8 years ago. Back when I started playing Overwatch, it took me about 2 months to hit top 500, and I was invited to play for a professional team. I was asked to play Zenyatta, which I had 0 hours on at the time. After some practice, I managed to do pretty well and hit a pretty high rank. And for the purpose of this video, it's the equivalent of, let's say, GM1 of this time. However, there was a player that was considered #1 Zenyatta at the time. His nickname was Boombox, and if you've played the game for a while and old enough to remember the first Overwatch League season, you'd know he was pretty good Zenyatta. He consistently managed to hit the top 10 leaderboards exclusively playing Zenyatta. Back in the day, we didn't have the replay viewer, so any footage of players was exclusively seen on their live streams. But there was a problem. His VODs were locked behind a $5 paywall, and I wasn't about to pay to watch him. So what did I do to see what the #1 Zenyatta was doing that I wasn't? There was a website that was called Master Overwatch. It doesn't exist anymore. But you could do a stat comparison between 2 players. So I compared my stats to his. And I noticed that he had lower deaths than me, but more damage, while my accuracy was higher. That told me exactly what I needed to fix. I was dying too much, and it wasn't aim. It was positioning. Positioning is a very general term, so let me simplify this. For me specifically, I was getting caught in open spaces constantly. And as soon as I started utilizing natural cover to my advantage, I started dying less, thus doing more damage and winning more. And about 2 weeks later, I still remember this, I surpassed his rank. I'm telling you this story because now we're going to look at top players on the leaderboard, and I promise you, by looking at their stats and then looking at yours, you're gonna see a difference. These are the top 10 highest ranked support players in the world. Let's look at their stats and then compare them to the bottom portion of the top 500 leaderboards. Okay, so we go to top 2 Baptiste, and then we go like, okay, what stats do are really like, important to me? Well, damage, healing, and deaths. And then we see this guy has 5.7 deaths, this guy has 6.6k damage, and he has 10k healing, right? Oh, and then obviously most people would say, well, this damage is pretty high. And it is pretty high, right? Okay, and then you go to Baptiste, and he's like top 6, super high rank, champion 3. We see, okay, his deaths are lower than the other guy. And his damage is like lower than the other guy, but his damage is still abnormally high. It's like 60, 200. That's a lot. Yeah, his healing is way more than the other guy. Like, 20% more, but he has about also 10% less than damage. Okay, I'm starting to notice a trend. I watched two guys, and both of them had over 6,100 damage. One had 6.6k and one had 6.1k. Wait, but I thought Baptiste was a support, right? So why are they all doing damage? Two players that I checked so far are really high players, are really high ranked players, and they both do damage on Baptiste. That's really interesting. Let's see the other guy. Then we click this guy. He's top 7. He's champion 4 or whatever. Okay, 5.3 deaths. It's kind of like the other guy. Okay, this guy has lower damage, right? It's still pretty high though. Like, it's not 6,600, but it's still pretty high, right? His damage pretty high. It's not crazy number like 6,100 or 6,200, but still pretty high. Let's see if we can continue finding the trend. Then we look at Otters. I don't know who Otters is, but we're about to find out. All right. Then we scroll down. Okay, 5,500 damage. Wait, this is like more than the other guy. And then his healing number is also like they're around between 10 and 12k. And deaths are like around that. Like that would also pretty close in deaths. So I'm noticing a trend. So the top 10 and the top 15 have lower damage, still pretty high, but lower damage than number 1 and 2. So what is really the difference, right? Well, they just do more damage. If stats don't matter, how is it possible that every single Baptiste that I pick in top 20 leaderboards have high damage? Explain this to me. Let's go to a Masters 1 player and choose Phytalk. 5,200. He has less damage than the players in top 20, and he has less healing than the people in top 20. Is the damage so good? Yes, but you have to understand. He is also playing against significantly worse players. All the people that we have watched in the top 20 are Champion 5 players. This is Master 1. The difference between Masters 1 and Champion 5 is enormous. It's huge. But still, when he plays against worse players, he plays less damage, less healing, same deaths. Which means, just like somebody in the name of Gojo in my chat said, less uptime. It means he's just not shooting enough. So what do you notice? The top support players have incredible damage, really good healing, and fairly low deaths compared to the amount of healing and damage that they do. While the top 500 support players might have okay damage, okay healing, and okay deaths, but it's pretty clear that the top supports manage to do more damage while still doing the same amount of healing. I mean, if we look at tank players, I'm willing to bet that it's gonna be the same with tank. If we look, Champion 1, that's pretty impressive, damn. Champion 1. So if we're to look at this guy, if I had to guess, Infected has lower deaths, higher damage on Ramattra than anybody in the bottom top 500. And he plays against champion player. 4.6 deaths, 12k damage. 4.6 deaths, 12k damage, right? And let's say eliminations per life, 427, because maybe it's relevant. We'll see. 427, eliminations per life, 4.6 deaths, and 12k damage. Let's round it up. And now, we'll come to the bottom 500. We're going to find a Ramattra player. We're going to click Ramattra. We're going to see, 5.2 deaths, 0.6 deaths more. Actually, here damage done is kind of like, it's kind of the same, but he still dies more, right? He still dies more, and eliminations per life are also significantly lower. The other guy is 4.3 something, and this guy's 3.8. So how is it possible that this guy does more damage, but has less eliminations and dies more? Well, because what I know is what I know, right? If what I know is what I know, well, I could probably tell you the reason why that happens, because this guy is probably focusing the tank a little bit too much, while Infected is trying to get picks on people that can actually die and not focusing the enemy tank so much. And also, we can talk about the skill disparity. Champion 1 is a long, long way than Masters 3. Same thing with tanks. Low deaths, very high damage, and good eliminations. While the low GM players mostly don't have that high damage and that amount of eliminations. For DPS, you can look in the leaderboards yourself. You'll see that it's pretty much the same thing. Some might say it's because they're mechanically better. However, it's important to remember that champion players play against significantly better players, while GM players play against worse players comparatively. So the mechanical skill kind of equals out based on who you play against. I thought stats don't tell the full story. Just because something doesn't tell you the full story doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. Let's say, like, you found out somebody was murdered on the street, and you saw a knife on the floor. Well, yes, this knife that has blood on it doesn't tell you the full story, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. Just because something doesn't tell you the full story means that it doesn't matter? Of course it does. So these numbers that I show might not mean anything to you, but that doesn't mean they don't matter. It's just that you don't understand them and you can't convert them into something simple and practical. That's why I'm here. Let me show you how to read your stats to help you identify what you can fix starting your next game. The stats you're mainly going to be looking at are deaths per 10, damage per 10, and if you're a support player, also healing per 10. Remember, you want to compare them between the same hero. So if you're a Reinhardt player, you don't compare it to a Doomfist player. If you're an Ana player, you don't compare it to a Zenyatta player. And if you're a Tracer player, you don't compare it to a Hanzo player. So look at your stats and then go to the top leaderboards and find the players who play your heroes. If you have low damage and low deaths, it means you have low uptime, which in practice means you spend a lot of time doing nothing. You stay on the payload, you wander around the map for no reason, or in short, playing too passive, which means usually playing too far away from your effective range. So where you have your damage fall off, or if you play projectiles, it becomes very, very difficult to hit them the further away you are. So what you need to do is play way more aggressive, sometimes will result in you feeding until you find the sweet spot where you do a lot of damage, get a lot of kills without dying too much. If you have low damage and high deaths, it means that you're playing overly aggressive and dying too much. And because you spend a lot of time in spawn or running around to get heals, you don't deal enough damage to win teamfights. In practice, it means that you're playing in open spaces instead of close to natural cover, or you constantly find yourself way too close to enemies and in front of them. So what you should do is keep a little bit more range to the point that you still can hit your shots effectively and utilize your cooldowns, but not close enough so people can hit you with the same treatment. So for example, if you play Cassidy or against a Roadhog, you want to stay outside of his hook range, but close enough for you to be able to hit your shots to the maximum amount of the damage you can do. And ideally also not in front of them. High damage, low deaths, but still lose? It means that most of your damage isn't leading up to a kill. You either burn your cooldowns on enemies that won't die, like a full HP Orisa that has 45 for example. You also might be shooting the enemy tank a little bit too much instead of finding flanks and off angles to shoot the DPSs and supports. Remember, your cooldowns need to get you value. Value will lead up to a kill. If people cannot follow up on your cooldowns or you yourself cannot follow up on your cooldowns, it's not the time to use them. For supports, low healing number doesn't necessarily mean you're not healing your team. However, a high healing number, like over 10,000 for example, I suspect you might be healing a little bit too much and you trade it off for damage, and you have to remember that damage is the thing that wins you games. Healing delays your teammates' death, but you still depend on them to get the kill. However, if your healing is below 6,000, I can almost confidently say that your teammates are dying because you didn't heal them. Stats don't give you answers. They give you better questions and narrow down what you should look for. They don't win you games. They show you how to win more games. So next time someone says stats don't tell the full story, just smile, nod, and know the truth. Stats do tell the story. You just have to learn how to read it.